With my best friend's birthday coming, the video should be released at that date, I thought that I would make a surprise video for him. You know, when you make something really shitty yourself, because the thought counts. And totally not because you want to save up a bit of cash on something that the person could actually use or want. So yeah, the following presentation was totally made for him to enjoy and not as some weird vanity piece. So, I was thinking what game to cover, something that would immortalize our friendship. I thought about Eye of the Dragon, a really junky but fun PC game that actually caused my first major interaction with him. I had his address on our bootleg Polish version of ICQ and he was searching for cheats for this game. We started talking and somehow he remained my best friend ever since. Also, it's funny because Smok is dragon in Polish. I found the game too obscure to make a video about it though. Other potential picks were gothic, but it felt too impersonal, even though he really likes the series. Klonoa 2, one of the very few PS2 games he ever played. Saints Row 2, which was the game that cemented our friendship, even though we weren't using any voice chat or anything. It was a blast to play with him over that summer vacation, but to make a video about it and half-assed it would be a serious crime. And that's why I went with a budget simplistic game based on the Tom and Jerry license. And hey, first impressions are really nice, with the opening screens resembling the prelude to one of the shorts. Released late in the PlayStation lifecycle, November 2000, by a small company called Warthog, most known for their Star Trek Invasion, which was pretty good, decent rally titles, and some other better and worse licensed games. I would call them legit craftsmen, and sure, they did a blunder from time to time, which brings us to the game itself. We are treated with a bit bootleg sounding version of the original theme. It isn't great, but it works, I guess. The menus use official artwork, with every screen having a different one. And hey, there's an option to individually mute sound effects and music, something that is based, especially if you wanted to rip them from the game without having to unpack and decompile all the data. Okay, enough with prolonging the inevitable. So, the game. Housetrap pits Tom and Jerry against each other inside the house known from the cartoons. I rewatched most of the episodes made by Hanna-Barbera. It's the best Tom and Jerry era, bite me. And it seems quite faithful to the source. The available rooms open up as you progress in the campaign, consisting of 15 levels. At first you only have a living room, kitchen, dining room, laundry room and first floor's hall. But as you progress, the house slowly opens, including a study, game room, backside of the house, garden, basement and the second floor, with a baby's room, bedroom, bathroom and attic. Quite a lot, but you unlock them all pretty quickly, and some levels unlock more than one room at a time, so some levels just shuffle the available rooms around. Player 1 always plays as Jerry, so sadly, just like in the source material, Tom will always be the loser. Because, believe it or not, a game that was made for children is quite easy, with a singular difficulty spike by the end. The goal of the game, 80% of the time, is to reduce the opponent's life bar to 0, using weapons and setting traps around the house. Both Tom and Jerry are placed in the house. The rooms available depend on which of the 15 in-game scenarios was chosen. Each room has its own specific items that can be picked up and weaponized. Some also have stationary objects that can be used as a trap, like a TV that will distract someone trying to get past it, or the lawnmower. The game always plays in split screen mode, and you can always see what your opponent is doing and what their current location is. Going back to it, I thought that it was a terrible decision on the part of developers, as in my eyes it ruined the element of surprise and trickery. I mean, I've seen what my opponent has prepared for me and where he is. How am I going to fall for it now? And then, in the heat of the battle, while chasing Tom, I got serious case of tunnel vision and completely forgot about something I'd seen with my own eyes just moments ago. I was so dumbstruck by what happened. The game basically reduced my IQ to one of a cartoon character, and it was so incredibly funny to me. And it didn't stop being funny, no matter how many times it happened. The best part of it being that it was my own fault. The game provided me with the information after all, thanks to being able to watch my opponent on the lower half of the screen. If it was as I wanted it to be originally, as in I had no information that Tom has set up a trap, it would just be frustrating and cheap because I had no way to anticipate it. So yeah, it's quite genius, and it changes the game dramatically, as it is not only about outsmarting your opponent, but also forcing them to make mistakes and putting constant pressure on them while keeping your own cool. And yeah, this gameplay format isn't really original, as Spy vs Spy for Commodore 64 did the same thing 16 years before House Trap. But there's nothing bad in reusing a great idea while putting your own spin on it, isn't it? It's kind of weird that there weren't that many more games like it. There's no mechanical difference between Tom and Jerry. They are just different models using different sounds, and even the hitboxes are actually the same, and that's okay, I guess. Everything is balanced as it should be. After all, both Tom and Jerry were equal in their power level in the cartoon, even if Tom had to lose nearly every time for the status quo to be preserved. Not to mention that stat differences would make it really unfair for the player who is stuck with only one character, not counting multiplayer. Still, it would be nice if, for example, Jerry was a bit faster but weaker when it comes to melee weapons, forcing the player to use trickery, while Tom would be stronger and more resilient, but slower and received more damage from the environmental traps. You can have 3 items on yourself at any time, each one taking one face button, with X being used to set up traps and make use of equipped items. If you don't need a weapon, you can toss it by pressing the R1 button. If you are in the same room with your enemy, you can strategically pick up weapons and drop them instantly into the void to deny them, but remember that if you both leave the room and then anyone will re-enter it, the pickups will respawn. Basically, there are 4 types of pickups, totaling, I believe, 54 items. Melee weapons like hammers, umbrella or the frying pan that allow you to assault your opponent and deal damage. There are some minor differences when it comes to the amount of damage, range and how quick the swing is, but the animation and durability, 3 uses, are the same for each weapon. Limited durability forces you to be constantly on the lookout for another weapon. If you press X rapidly, you'll be able to hit 2 times at once. Hitboxes are kind of wonky though, and if you're too close, there's a big chance you'll miss. Thrown weapons are just that. The heavier and more damaging, the more time it takes to do the throw. The game assists the thrower a bit, giving it a tiny bit of home in, but not big enough to make it unfair. It's definitely the type of weapons that the AI is the best with, so once you see Tom readying one, try to hide behind something or exit the room if you can. Placed weapons are the funniest, but with the lowest DPS. Trying to just pick them up will hurt you and give your opponent time to close the distance. Instead, you have to sneak by holding the R1 button and walking over the trap. Some placed weapons spawn near the entrances to the rooms, so you can easily walk over them by accident. And yeah, you still can trip over stuff you placed yourself. CPU is especially prone to that. And finally, the most rare category that only appears as a random event that is announced by the game, forcing every participant to rush to the correct room. They are basically consumable power-ups, giving you super strength, speed or invincibility. For all the hype, they aren't really game-changing, and more often than not, you'll finish the round before any of them will ever manage to spawn. Outside of weapons you can collect, there are also household items that can be tampered with to act as traps. TV, radio, ironing board or oven. There's a lot of them, and they actually are quite useful. You set them up by getting near them without a weapon equipped and pressing X. Just like with the placed weapons, they aren't discriminating and can hit the one who set them up if they forget about them and get in their effective range. Sneaking around won't activate them and will show their danger zone, so it's quite wise to always do that when near the potentially dangerous object. Oh, and beware, they can cause collateral damage if the enemy activates them and you're close. Things like vacuum cleaner and lawnmower are especially dangerous. As I've said, there are 15 episodes, each with their own cheesy title and starting card. Episodes differ from each other in available rooms and items. The majority of the episodes are just skirmishes against Tom, and they will rarely take you more than 2 minutes, and that's really generous. But every 5th level uses a different set of rules. While the standard skirmishes may perhaps be references to classic cartoons from the Hanna-Barbera era, these 3 are wholeheartedly based on specific episodes. In these 3, both contenders try to get a special item and secure the point by bringing it to a concrete spot on the map, different for each side. After the item is delivered, the next spawns. The player who gets 3 out of 5 wins. We have Garden of Eden, where Tom wants to cook ducklings in the oven while Jerry tries to save them. And yeah, while missing 1 or 2 doesn't end up in failure, it sure feels like one. I mean, these ducks are dead! If one carrying the mission object gets hit, they'll drop it instantly, allowing the other side to swipe it. The second one is Oarman Spike. adapting the episode Quiet Please, where Spike threatens Tom with skinning him alive if he'll make too much noise. And that's our objective as Jerry, collect a musical instrument to wake up Spike, who is napping in the main room, while Tom wants to throw them to the trash. And hey, you can actively use the instrument as Jerry, and do that in a quick succession, creating a nice sound overlap. By the way, CPU isn't really smart when it comes to these levels. He'll try to actively search for the important items, but it's really ineffective at that. So much that when I left the game for about 2 minutes, he hadn't found even one item. He mostly tries to ignore the player while searching, but if he's close, he'll strike you once or twice. He only gets really aggressive once you hold the item, but even then he can meander a lot. Finally, there's Oodles for Toodles, where Jerry just wants to cockblock Tom, because he just doesn't want to let his bro go. Huh, maybe we were the baddies all along, huh? Tom wants to woo Toodles by bringing her gifts, while Jerry just throws them into the trash. And for what? Just to protect the status quo. Funnily enough, Springtime for Thomas is the episode where Jerry gets perhaps the most hate from the show's fanbase. Also, the game unclimactically ends after this level, just skipping to the full credits and then main menu. I can generously say that it takes about 40 minutes to finish the game, including loadings and all, but you could easily go below 30 minutes if you tried a little bit. Yeah, the game is that short. I mean, even as a kid, I was done with it after 1 hour. Being able to save in this game is a joke, and I never did it because, well, going through all the episodes is the whole fun, no? And you know, the short length of the game isn't really the problem here. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. After you played one level of the game, it's like you've played the whole of it. Well, okay, after you played 5 first levels, which is like less than 15 minutes of play. And don't get me wrong, the game is silly fun. I really enjoyed it back then, and I have enjoyed it now. It is perfect if you want to just turn your brain off and are up for some cartoon hijinks. But it doesn't change the fact how low in content the game is. I mean, they could at least allow you to play the game again, but as Tom, finally being able to give Jerry what he deserves. Or at least throw in additional game mode or two, like survival or one where you destroy the house while Tom tries to stop you. But no, there's only the extremely short campaign and 2-player mode, which is pretty bomb to be honest. Well, outside of 11 skirmishes against Tom and 3 item hunts, there is one more level, one that should be the final one. You know, Tom's AI is really something else in this game. I mean, even the box art makes fun of his intelligence. Look, who would even fall for something like that? Tom, please. Anyway, I'm really sad that I'm not a programmer in moments like this, because I would really want to see how Tom operates. I mean, he tends to wander meaninglessly, sometimes getting lost in thoughts, collecting items, with his favorite hobby being setting up traps, forgetting about them and getting hurt. Most of the time he really doesn't actively engage you. Once I left the game running, staying in the same place for the whole time, and poor guy just killed himself on his own traps. Seriously, the game is actually harder when you actively hunt Tom. So yeah, he's a complete goofball and pushover. And then you hit level 14 and meet Meccano and start to regret everything. Meccano is fixed on one thing, completely obliterating Jerry. He is faster than you, so you can't really lose him, doesn't activate traps, will decimate you in direct combat by doing an unblockable 3-hit combo that hurts like hell, and he himself is really hard to hit. Your only hope is getting into a room with a wind-up mouse, positioning yourself just right, and swinging the melee weapon while praying for a hit. Luckily, the boss doesn't have much health, because hitting him is a nightmare. If we are talking about the presentation, it works. Sure, the resolution is horrible and textures are not too good, but the house is nicely detailed and faithful to the original. You have access to a really large assortment of weapons, even if they feel really similar. The models are fairly decent, and the available music tracks sound like they wouldn't be out of place in the original shorts. Sadly, there are only a handful of teams during the regular skirmishes, though every special stage has its own individual team, and they are glorious. Like the track from Orman Spike lives rent-free in my head and will stay there until I die. I just can't believe that they've made something so good for this game. Oh, and one other very important thing, the sound effects. They are great and fit the game as an adaptation of the original show perfectly. And that's the thing, they could just made it a platform game like the one for the NES, but they wanted to do something more in the spirit of the original. I can say that they have succeeded. While brief, simplistic, janky, Housetrap is full of love and attention to details. Playing it felt like being a part of the show. Too bad that they didn't include that scream. I mean, it should be immortalized, and playing in a room of the Library of Congress was something 24/7. And 3 years later, this entertainment, the guys behind the infamous Earthworm Jim 3D, made Tom and Jerry War of the Whiskers. Well, the game wasn't at all like the Housetrap, it being a 3D platforming fighter game just like their previous Tom and Jerry game, Fists of Fury. It was really fun and solved most of the issues I had with the hero of this video. Multiple varied locales. A lot more depth in the combat, with the ability to block, command grab the enemy, taunt and go berserk. The computer actually fights back and can prove quite a bit of a challenge. And you can play as Tom and other characters from the show, some really obscure who showed up in just few episodes. And hey, small characters differ with their stats from bigger ones. There's still not all that much content, but it's a great party game. It's even better on the systems other than PS2, as then it offers 4-player brawls that are as chaotic as they are amazing. But as fun as War of the Whiskers was, it's much worse at adapting the source material. The sound effects, the music, the general feel. Don't get me wrong, there are still a lot of positive details and shoutouts, but it feels off. There's no iconic screams too. I can recommend it though, especially the ports supporting 4-player brawls. I'm not going to rate Tom and Jerry in Housetrap though. I just can't. I respect your intelligence, dear viewer, and I think that you can make your own conclusions. But what I wanted to say is that even though the game has a lot of problems and imperfections, it knows what it is and doesn't try to be anything different. I see many things that irk me a bit, as I think it could be a PS1 classic if the developers tried a bit more. But I'm still completely okay with the way it is. I remember how my dad brought me the game over 22 years ago, and I had a blast with it, not even giving a shit about how short or repetitive it was. I didn't even like the original cartoon that much and preferred newer ones like Ed, Edd and Eddy. Yeah, I know. It takes a bit to realize how truly good something is and to respect it for that. What I wanted to say is that, as silly as it is, I've played a colossal amount of other, better games, but there's still a big place for this silly little game in my cold, cold heart, and it was a treat to be able to experience it again. As for our birthday boy, Smok, my man, you're a bit like Tom. I constantly annoy and pester you, and yet you endure it all. You did it from the start, and you keep doing it today. I'm sorry that I'm so flawed, and you deserve better. But I wanted to say that your friendship is one of the biggest treasures I could receive from the world itself. And it is a proof that, yeah, life can be quite okay too. So everything the best for you, because you truly deserve it. And now, things from the other guys.
Smoku, jesteś piękny.
Gratuluję.
Congratulations!
Gratulacje.
Gratulacje!
Gratuluję, Smoku. Wygrałeś.
Gratulacje.
Gratulacje.
Gratuluję!
Gratuluję.
Gratuluję.
Herzlichen Glückwunsch.
Gratulacje!
Dziękuję.